So in the past, we've talked about how to recover an underexposed image in a very basic surface level way. Today, I want to go kind of a level deeper and look at what happens when we purposefully underexpose an image when we're taking it, and how do we then recover certain parts of the image in post-processing. So let's say you have an image where the subject is really dark, the sky is really bright. How do we balance preserving the highlights and the beautiful colors in the sky, but also saving our subject that was too dark? How do we brighten the subject without losing everything in the sky, okay? So we're gonna look at using masking tools in Lightroom, how to do all of that, which is super fun, and will really open up a whole new world in editing for you if you're a beginner to Lightroom. And the image that we're gonna be looking at today is almost that exact example I just gave. So it's an image of my daughter. We were working in kind of challenging light, and I wanted to get a photo of my daughter, but I knew that if I exposed her using the metering mode that my camera was on, it was gonna completely blow out the sky, and it's much harder to recover blown out highlights than it is to pull information from shadows. So oftentimes photographers will purposefully underexpose to preserve highlights. So that's what we're gonna look at today, how to then post-process and edit those shadows and highlights to keep everything looking nice and clean. Okay, so here's our image. You can see that it almost feels like we're gonna need to do two completely separate edits. The sky is honestly almost overexposed. The subject is underexposed. And then we have this foreground or grass area that is properly exposed. We're gonna have to do essentially really three different chunks almost of editing to try to get this image to feel a little bit cohesive, a little more finished. We're gonna learn how to use masking to edit different portions of our image when we've done something like purposely underexposed it. And then subnote, I talked in my last video about children's privacy. I chose to include this photo of my daughter because she's kind of looking down. You can't see her eyes. She doesn't look like this anymore. This was like 3-4 years ago. So if we go down to info, we can see that the image was taken with ISO 200. So it shouldn't be bad when we start to pull up those shadows. There's not going to be a ton of grain or noise introduced. The shutter speed was 1/400 and then aperture f3.2. I don't remember why I wanted to tell you that, but in case you're curious, that's what the settings I used were. I guess I was looking at the ISO. We're going to go back into the editing panel. And initially, if this was not an image that needs to be broken down into 3 parts, I would jump right into fixing the color temperature and then looking at the exposure. But because I kind of need to separate this, I'm actually gonna jump right into masking. So this is the panel that we're really gonna be focusing on in this video, is how to mask. So when you open the masking panel, you're gonna see you can create different masks. There's some auto buttons up here like subject, sky, background, but then you can also drop down and do landscape, objects. You can use a brush and get really specific and paint on exactly the part of the image you want it to grab. And like back in the day, that's how we all had to do it. We just had to mask our little lives away. But now the AI is so great, it'll auto find people in the sky and the subject. That was not a thing like 5 years ago. Yeah, I don't think 5 years ago it was. Definitely not 10 years ago. All right, and we're not going to do the linear gradient, radial gradient, range. We're not going to cover any of that in this video. We're just looking at basic masking, okay, for our friends that have never done it before. So maybe the first thing I would do is go to my sky, and maybe I would try to bring that back down closer to like the exposure of the grass at the very least. And then I can work my daughter as her own masking layer and also try to bring her up more to be more exposed, kind of closer to the grass, okay? Here, there's a couple different things we can do if we're trying to recover a sky. We can obviously bring our exposure down a bit. We can decrease our highlights. And you're gonna see that's gonna introduce a lot of the color back in because we're like pulling the blown out portions back. We can come down here and we can go to dehaze, and this dehaze slider is cool because it's gonna either remove or add haze into the image. We're gonna wanna go the other way and reduce some of the haze, and that's gonna bring a ton of color back in. Now, this obviously looks kind of crazy, but just to show you the two extremes, right? It's like adding all the haze, taking all the haze away. So we're gonna go somewhere in the middle here where it doesn't look too like fantasy, fake, whatever. I really like images to feel how they did when I took them, not like crazy composite magical things. Bring that actually down here. Clarity is another thing you can try. It might bring back some clouds. I'll just do like a touch of that. But you can already see, if we look at our before and after, like that was the original sky and this is where we're at right now. So already this image feels 70% better. There's a little bit of weird stuff happening here, I feel like, where we're like the pixels are getting kind of freaky along the edge. So we may have to pull some of that back, but we'll just see where we land. And I'm actually going to go ahead and zoom in. So there's our sky. So we might pull back. Let's just see if we take back some of the clarity, that helps a bit. I'm going to leave this. I don't think it's noticeable enough that highlights are not doing it. The exposure is definitely messing with that horizon line a bit, but that's okay. The other thing we can do, of course, is go down to our color. We can introduce some more saturation. If you want to go really crazy, like Lion King sunset, you could do that. We're not going to do that. And then at the end, so once I've gotten my 3 pieces kind of feeling more cohesive, then I will go back into my main edit panel and do an additional layer of those. This doesn't have to feel perfect right now. I just want it to match or mirror my whatever in my image is properly exposed better. Now I'm going to make a new mask. Because we already have a mask open, you're not seeing that fun, like fancy main screen. So we're going to come up and hit create new mask. And then here's that panel that we saw earlier where we can click the subject or the sky or the background, people. I'm going to go ahead and hit subject and see if it just grabs my daughter. I think it will. I'm pretty sure it will. It did great. She is selected. Down to like her hairs. It even got all her hairs because there's a good contrast between her and the background. So now the first thing I'm going to do is pull up my exposure a little bit because again, right now I'm working on trying to bring her closer to the feeling of the rest of the image, make it all match. And then the other main thing I'm going to do is pull up the shadows because she is obviously in shadow. She's away from the main light source, which is the sun, facing dark grass, which is not reflecting any light back onto her. I feel like this right here is now a more appropriate starting point to start editing my image, okay? So now that we've done that mask, the only other thing I might do is maybe introduce a mask just on her face. But before I do that, I'm going to backtrack into my main editing panel and start doing some main image edits. But that is the gist. Like if all you cared about in this video was the masking, like how do we do that? How do we separate things out? That's how you do it. If you want to follow along as I edit the rest of this, sure, go ahead. I'm not going to edit it perfectly because I don't want to get overwhelming into like curved panels and colors and things like that. But we're going to just do basic edits. All right, so I would increase the exposure a little bit. And now you can see as I'm adding more light, I'm losing all that stuff that I worked on in the background. So we're just gonna roll with it and see where we land. Okay, so now she's looking like a real gray, I think. So we're gonna come down to our color. We're gonna warm things up. This was an interesting time of day. The sun, this was like just prior to blue hour. Everything was very orange when I was taking the photo, but also like not that bright because it was kind of hazy. You can almost see the haze. Weird lighting, but it's cool. So we'll increase this a bit. And then this tint slider is always really helpful. I try to like go back and forth and not look at the actual slider so I don't get judged. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm adding 20 magenta because it doesn't matter, but add some vibrance. All right, and then down here, if this was gonna be like a full-blown edit, I would be all up in this color mixer panel. But again, what we cared about in this video is really the masking. So we're just gonna focus on that. So let's say I feel like this was okay, but now I'm sad that I lost some stuff in my sky. So now I can go back into my masking panel, click my sky again, and then maybe there's more work I can do now in my sky. So maybe pull the darks down. You could be doing all this on your point curve as well. But again, this is a beginner Lightroom tutorial, so we're not gonna overwhelm you. We're just gonna close that out. And then maybe we'll dehaze a little bit more. We don't want it to look too fake, so we're not gonna do too much. If this was taken with a higher ISO, I would probably need to come down. Remember in the last video where I talked about recovering an underexposed image, we needed to add in the noise reduction. For this image, there's not much noise if we zoom in. I don't think we need to do that, but I can pull some up just to show you. I would do that if it was taken with a higher ISO. Now we're gonna go back to our subject. We're gonna work on her a little bit more, maybe pull up the shadows again, add some contrast. And then I feel like this is starting to look really good. So much better than, again, let's just look at our before. It's first in progress. Ready? 3, 2, 1. It's so different. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I'm not loving, it feels like there's like this haze behind her a little bit, but you can see there's the sun. There's just like a peak of the sun right behind. It's barely on the horizon line. That's just maybe gonna be there. I might go back into my main panel edits and pull this up a bit, not too much. I just really want this sky to be like, wow, because in person it was so beautiful. All right, that's the basics. Now, let's say I did want to add the brush mask. Let me just show you how to do that just in case. So this is the brush. You're going to open up your brush mask and then there's different options. So obviously the size of your brush, the feathering is just like how soft you want the edges of the circle of your brush to be. So do you want it to like literally feather out, or do you want there to be a hard line? Like, are you trying to get an exact mark with your brush on an area. Zoom in and then we'll add our brush. So maybe I want to brush her face and adds a little bit more brightness here. So I could just do a little brush. It's mainly like her forehead that's super dark, I guess, because it's like the most downward part of her face. I don't know how to describe that. And then we can pull that up a little bit, pull the highlights down a tiny bit. Oh, we don't want that much shadows. All right, and then we'll zoom back out. And then you can also check your mask. So like here's that mask before, after. It just brightened her face a little bit. Kind of made her forehead match her cheeks a little better. Granted, she did have like a wicked tan on her forehead on the strip. So part of it's just her tan. But you know, if you wanted to like add rosy cheeks to someone, that's how you would do it. You'd take the mask, brush on their cheeks and then increase the saturation or the reds or whatever. Again, here's our overall before. Here's our after. So looking great. So that is the basics of masking. And then of course you would go export your image whenever you felt good about it. If you have any other questions about masking tools in Lightroom, drop them in the comments if there's something I didn't cover that you're confused about. But that's essentially you're marking off a section of your image where then you can make specific edits to just that part. You can still make edits to the overall image that will impact the masked portions, but the masked portions are also getting worked. Okay, so hopefully that helped you. If you have another specific editing concern that you want to look at in Lightroom or Photoshop, or anything like that, drop it in the comments and I'd love to make a follow-up video for you. In the meantime, look at our playlist, look at our channel, see what other videos we have for you, and hopefully we can keep growing your photography practice today.